Welcome, everyone, to the IFS Down Under podcast, where we have deep conversations with leaders in the IFS community and share stories and the wisdom of Australian IFS therapists. I'm your host, Oliver Brook. I'm here today with my co-host, Lorani Lees. Welcome, Lorani. It's always, wonderful to be with you. Yeah. And just before I introduce you, Kay, I want to begin by just welcoming all of our parts to be here with us in this space. And the same for our listeners, to really just kind of gather together to hold this sacred conversation. And I also want to, start by acknowledging all of our ancestors and the different lineages that we come from, and the different ancestral homes that our lineages originate from. And just really kind of welcome each of those lineages into this space, and also want to acknowledge the ancestors of the land on which we're meeting, which is kind of 3 different places across Australia and in the US. And so just really want to acknowledge the First Nations people who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting, and want to pay my respects and honour their elders, their healers, and their continuing practices to protect land and culture, and also their ancient knowings and ways of working with legacy and working with ancestors that we've all inherited and that we can come back to. Yeah. So today, Lorani and I have a wonderful pleasure of interviewing UK, and I just want to kind of share a bio about your journey, and then we'll open the space to have a rich chat with you. So Kay Gardner is a senior lead trainer for the Internal Family Systems Institute. Kay's been a therapist who's worked in private practice for over 40 years in Chicago. Kay's also the co-founder of the Women's Circle, a women's program in Chicago, and has led various workshops around the country for men and women, including Persephone's Journey, Men and Their Mothers, Women and Their Fathers, and Sacred Theatre for Couples. And more recently, Kay's presented on legacy burdens and spiritual and energetic lens of IFS. Kay's also been involved in IFS since the early 1990s. And previous to that, she was a therapist and teacher of Hakomi Body Centered Psychotherapy, and helped to integrate the body into the IFS model 25 years ago. Kay brings a body-centered, spiritual, and energetic approach to her work, and has been a student of yoga and meditation for 40 years. Rani and I had the pleasure of connecting with UK in person this year, which was incredible, in Sydney, Australia, for a 3-day workshop on IFS, legacy burdens, gifts, and ancestors. And God, it was an incredible deep dive into your rich teachings, and what I loved most about your workshop, and it really taught me a lot as a workshop facilitator myself, was just how experiential it is and how much trust you had in us as participants. And so you would teach so briefly, and then you would share, an opportunity to deepen and process the work ourselves. So I really love the way you teach towards this work of working with ancestors and legacy in IFS. And I was really blessed to experience a demo with you. And I'm really happy, if we want to kind of dip in and out of that as we talk about these concepts today. I'm happy to kind of be a bit of a case study as to how this lands in our system and how it impacts us and what's useful. Yeah. So thank you, Kay, so much for the gift of this moment to come and share your teachings with us. We're really grateful to have you. Welcome to IFS Down Under, and thank you.
I'm so happy to be with you both, and it just wasn't that long ago that we were together in person. It was so joyous for me. I had so much fun being with you all in Australia and being with the 2 of you. So it's a big treat for me to be here and to be sharing with you again. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome, Kay. Yeah, it was wonderful, Kay. I remember saying to you, can we just adopt you? Can you just stay here with us?
This would be a very good time to move to Australia, considering what's happening over here in our country. But I did feel a sense of family with you all. It was a very interesting experience. I was like, oh, They are my people, and maybe it's the IFS thing, or it's just you guys. I don't know. I felt the same way in Melbourne too. It was just lovely to extend the IFS wings out that far and to find
Mhm.
that same sense of family. It was
Yeah,
beautiful.
Mm.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
to be with you.
So yes. So Kate, I thought we would share with you and our viewers that what our intentions are for this interview. So our intention to invite you, as much as we love having you and speaking to you, the bigger intention here is to share your teaching, give you an opportunity to talk about your passion, IFS, legacy burdens, gifts, and working with ancestors with our IFS community here. We don't actually get many opportunities to speak to lead trainers and people in the field with such expertise. So it's a real treat for Ollie and I to interview you today.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I might kick off the first question, Kay. Kay, can you tell us about the origins of your IFS journey and how IFS became part of your personal healing journey and your professional life?
Yeah, that's a really fun story for me to share with you. It was in the 1990s, some probably, I don't know, 94 or something. And I was a Hakomi therapist at the time and a trainer and was on the training track for Hakomi. And my Hakomi teacher came to one of our Hakomi groups and he said, "Hey, I met this guy and he's got something that we don't have and we need to know about it." And we were like, "Who's that?" And he said, "His name is Richard Schwartz. He works down at the Institute for Juvenile Research. And I just met him, and he's got this concept that is like, he's got all the things we have, but he has this concept that you need to learn about." And he was talking about self energy. And so I went down to, I was instantly was like, okay, well, Greg says we need to meet him. We need to meet him. So Dick was giving a talk down at the Institute for Juvenile Research where he taught, and I went down to listen to him. And I still remember hearing about IFS, like, all these parts and the self, and I can remember rolling my eyes a little bit, like, what is this guy talking about, like parts and I just was like, I was not impressed instantly. And I expected this like old wise man with a big beard, and he was only like 40 at the time. And, just this little Jewish guy, like just regular guy. I was like, I wasn't impressed. Like it took me about 45 minutes of listening to him talking. Just, where was the old wise man that was supposed to be here? And then I was a demo for him. So I picked the card and was a demo, and I got to experience the work. And once I began to access self energy, it was like I had only had that experience one time before working with my Jungian analyst. And it was like, it was an experience where he had asked me, like, who is it that's watching this? And so I went into this experience of self energy.
Mm.
But I just figured because he was an old wise man, he could take me there. And then I didn't really have another way to get there. But after sitting with Dick, I was like, oh my God, like this guy is really onto something. I had this very deep experience. And then after the demo, he did the path exercise with us. So I don't know if you guys have had that
Yeah.
path exercise. So he did the path exercise, and I followed the path and went up to the mountain and had a guide come in. And I had this beautiful dark goddess come in, and she embraced me. And then she said to me, "This will be your life's work." And
Wow.
I was like, whoa, this is wow, with this guy? Like, so I went up to Dick afterwards and I said, this is what I got. Like, I got that this is my life's work. And I said, I don't know what to do about it. I didn't need to go to the Institute for Juvenile Research to take classes. Like, And I said, would you consider, maybe doing a consultation group with some of the Hakomi people? And he said, sure. So we started a consultation group and we met, I think it was like once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month, I can't remember. And he would share sessions with us and we would share our stuff with him because he didn't know anything about working with the body or, he didn't have any of those pieces. And so, we'd share our stuff and he'd share his stuff. And we just started to the work started to blend together. And then at some point we said, how about if we take this on the road? Like, we knew how to do that because we were Hakomi therapists. So we had been, training out in the world he was just at the Institute. And we said, how about if we take this on the road? And he was like, yeah, Dick's like, so yeah, sure. So it's like, so we started, he said, well, we have to do some planning. And so we would go up to Michigan. We had this really beautiful retreat center that we would go to, and we'd go up there once a month and we'd have some of Mitchie Rose would come in and Paul Ginter and some of the Michigan people would come in who had been studying also in consultation groups with him. And together we would like just do brainstorming about like, how can we start to really develop this into a training model and take it out into the world? And so, concepts like unburdening came in from Mitchie Rose and, self-energy and the 8 C's, like all of that just started to, come through us, and Susan McConnell was the most organized of all of us. So she'd take out her notebook and write everything down, and so we had written material. And, once we had enough material, it was like, okay, well, let's advertise this, see if we can get a training off the ground, like maybe we could even make this happen. So our first training was in Chicago, and one of the women who was involved with us, her name is Susan Cahill. She's an authentic movement person. Her mother has this big, beautiful house up north, and it's like the Santa Fe kind of style. And so we decided to do the first one there. I think we got 13 people to come. We had to twist their arms, We didn't charge that much money, but, a little bit of money. And they came and, Dick was there and myself and Susan McConnell and there's a couple other people who never became trainers, but Susan Cahill and Bonnie Lessing and Tim and Priscilla Pedigo, who were trainers early and then left. And we just like, we'd Dick would start teaching and then we'd powwow together and we'd come up with experiential exercises that are still used in the trainings now. Like all the things you guys do, we figured that out years ago and wrote it all down. And so we'd do, authentic movement and, all kinds of things. Let's try this, right? Let's try this. Okay, and then we try it, and then we come back together. How'd that go? Oh, let's keep that one. Let's let that one. It was kind of like that, and then people would practice on each other, and that was our first training. That went on for a year. So people used to come for a year, like once every 2 months, they'd come for a weekend for a year. And then we thought, okay, that was fun and that was successful. Like, let's do another one. And so we did another one in Chicago. And that one was a little bigger because people liked it, and they told their friends and we got a little better at what we were doing. And so then another one came in and that one was probably about 18 people. C. Sykes was in that one. So that's when she started being involved with us. And Beth O'Neill, Susan's partner, was in that one. And so, then we got another group of people in, and then I think the next one was out in Connecticut. Ralph Cohen was starting to teach. He was teaching IFS in the university. So, and then he started a training out there, and then Mitchie decided she knew some people in Seattle, so she was going to try to do one in Seattle, and somebody in Asheville wanted to get a training going, so we brought some people in from Asheville, and it just started to fill out like that, and for years we went like that. For years, we sat around waiting for 16 people to be interested in the training so that we could get it to happen. Like that went on for, I don't know, a long time, like 6 years or something. And then there was like a little bit of interest that happened in Germany. Like Dick would go off to Germany and teach, and so Susan went off to Germany, and we just started to, and then Cease became a trainer, and so Cease went off and did, and then Tony Irvine Blank and Pam came in from Boston. Who went out to teach in Boston first? I think it might have been Susan McConnell. I went to teach in Boston, and Boston caught on fire. Like once it went to the East Coast, it was just like spread like crazy. So then we started to, develop. We had a leadership group, which there was like 5 of us who would decide like who's good enough to be a trainer, and and it just started to grow like that. And once I don't even remember when Australia came in. I don't even remember how that happened or who went out. Oh, I know Simon had called me to come over and train. I don't know how he got word of it, but he was like, "Would you please come over and train us?" And I said to him, "I can't travel that far and teach, but when I'm old, I'm coming over." Which is why I made that joke about, "I'm old now, Simon, I'm coming to Australia." But I think your first trainer may have been, it was supposed to be Barb Cargill, but then I think she got sick. So I think it was Osi, right? Or
it was Enat.
No.
Yeah.
Anat was your first one? Great. So that had already spread over to Israel first, right? Or Anat was here, I think. So she got trained here, and then she moved to Israel. So that's what happened, and then brought Aussie, and then she trained in Israel, right, and brought Aussie in, and so it just started spreading and spreading and spreading. And now we can't, we have so many trainers now. Like as soon as COVID happened, it just went viral, right? It just got like, and now we're just in most places in the world. There's an IFS training, and we've had to hire 50, 60 more trainers. So we're kind of on fire now. But we started out this little mom and pop group, we had our little conferences that, had maybe 20 people at them. And, now the conferences have thousands of people. And so it really grew. And I feel so happy and privileged to have been part of the very beginnings of it, and just what an honor. So that's the story.
It's an incredible story, Kay. Thank you so much for sharing that, and also just the detail of it and the naming of the different people that were involved. I feel like that gets missed sometimes. So really thank you for that. That was great to really know the origins of you and IFS and the wider community and how it spread.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious, at what point in that process did legacy work come in? Like when did the community start to notice that was
noticing
a
it
phenomena?
Are two different things. It's like I'll tell you the story. Because I'm writing a book, and so I felt like I had to get the true story about it, so I just got it like 6 months ago, like the real deal, because I used to tell this story about how there was some woman at the first conference who talked about legacy burdens, but I didn't know who she was. So I finally tracked her down. Her name is Jane Fink. And Jane Fink is now, I don't know, she's an elderly woman. I don't know how old she is, but she's also a storyteller. So she stopped being a therapist at some point, and now she's a storyteller, but she lives in Michigan. She was in a consultation group with Mitchie Rose and probably Paul Ginter and Tom Holmes. and maybe some other people, but I know those folks were in it. So she came to the consult group, and she had had this experience of working with a client, and she had the experience of the grandmother coming into the room, that dead grandmother coming into the room, and realized that the client was carrying the dead grandmother's issue. And she didn't know what to do with it. She was totally bewildered by it, like, I don't know what this is. And so Mitchie Rose, who's, a brilliant, brilliant, Mitchie Rose has a lot to do with a lot of the things that went down in IFS and like unburdening. And so she said, wow, we should call that a legacy burden. That sounds like a legacy burden. Like it's not just her burden, it's a legacy burden. And so this woman, Jane Fink, had come to the conference and she talked about this. And I heard the story. They didn't know how to work with them, but they knew that they existed, right? So once I heard this, and it was like the awareness that I had, that I knew that I was holding a legacy burden. It's like my mother's mother died in a mental institution. I had terrible fears of mental institutions. I would drive past them and freak out, and I had all this. I didn't even know the story, but I knew that I had this panic in me, and um, and pretty deep abandonment stuff that I knew wasn't mine. I wasn't abandoned, but my mother was 3 when her mother died. So I knew this wasn't mine. And I went on a journey to find out how to work with this, mostly for
Yeah.
myself, but also just because this concept was amazing to me and I had to figure it out. So this is probably in 1997 or 1997 probably. And so I began this journey of like studying with different shamans, studying with energy workers, reading Rupert Sheldrake on morphic fields, just reading just anything I could get my hands on to help me start to understand how to work with this. And I knew, this isn't something that you can talk about. This isn't like something that you can go to therapy and just talk through it. I knew it had to be energetic. So I just started studying with different energy workers. I'd be like, okay, well, maybe this person could help me figure this out. And I just started taking workshops and studying with different indigenous people, everything I could get my hands on until I began to have some understanding of how to work with it. And so with all of that, I started to develop an understanding of how to work with it energetically. At the same time I was doing this, Mitchie Rose was also interested in this. She was doing something very similar, studying with shamans and energy workers, and also Barb Cargill, another like-minded person. She had been hanging out with this information too. So we were kind of the 3 of us separately working on this together, but we were the 3 people who really developed it. And I think I was the only one teaching it in level 1s. At some point, I couldn't not. But I was told not to. Everybody was like, no, that's too woo-woo. Like, you can't teach that in level 1. And I was like, yeah, but I can't not. And besides, once I knew how to work with it, it kept showing up in my level 1s because, once you know how, like it just, how that works for you, I'm just able to, so people are coming to me for it, right? So it was showing up in my level 1s, and I just started to realize I had to teach it. So I was teaching it, and
Yeah.
so people who do trainings were learning how to do it. But then about 6 years ago, I think, a friend of mine sent me a book called Ancestral Medicine by Daniel Four. And I picked up the book and I looked at it and I thought, I looked at his picture. I thought, well, he's this young guy. Like, what's he gonna know? Is he really gonna know anything? And it's kind of like arrogant. Like what? I don't know. And so I saw a video. I decided to listen to a video instead of read the book because I started to read the book and I went, I don't know. But I watched a video of him and he really impressed me. And I thought, wow, I think this guy has something that I don't have. I think he's onto something. And so I started understanding that he was working with the whole and well ancestors, which is part of what I shared with you guys. And so I went and I did his training, and I was so glad because this additional concept of working with the whole and well ancestors just gives so much more holding and so much more ability to have people be able to hold and witness and really experience what their people went through, but not feel responsible for it. To really know that they're being held by these whole and well ancestors just creates so much more. And so it's just was such a helpful concept. And I got to know some of my ancestors that I never would have known without that body of work. So I really thank you, Daniel, for sharing that piece of the work. And it's really, I know it's really impacted me. And then I've had this beautiful opportunity to bring the work out in the world more. I came to be with you guys in Australia, and I went to Bali, and I've done legacy burden work, at various places around the United States. I was invited to do some in Ireland last year, and I'm going to Portugal this year, and then I was invited to come to Germany next year and work with German folks, which some big legacy stuff there, right? And back to Ireland next year, and so I just feel really honored and blessed to have the opportunity. I have deep, deep passion for this work, and so to get a chance to go to different places and experience, different cultures, and then it began. I began, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, to begin to think about not just legacy burdens, but also cultural burdens, and how it is that we carry these cultural burdens in us, and how we can begin to really clearly see how it lives in us, and developing ways to work with those cultural burdens so that we are no longer operating on in places that aren't healthy for us anymore, and probably never have been, but we don't even know it because we've been marinating in it for so long we can't even see the forest through the trees. But if we take a look at our world and what's happening in the world, we can start to see, like, oh, I think maybe we've been on the wrong road for a while, and we gotta bring ourselves back to something more simple, more humane, more connected, more loving, right?
Yeah.
So it's felt very important to do.
Thank you so much for that, Kay. It's an amazing, you just really encapsulate that journey, and bringing in all the contributions of major giants in the field around this. You mentioned about with Daniel Ford's work around the whole and well ancestors, and I'm just wondering, from your work and your experience, ancestors, if we meet with ancestors who are not well, who are not whole,
Yeah.
from, how do you work with those ancestors? And is there a way that you can support them, but as well as allow
Oh, yeah,
the
for sure.
burdens to be?
For
Yeah.
sure. Well, that's the beauty of Daniel's work is like calling in the whole and well ancestors and really inviting those whole and well ancestors to begin the healing process. And in
Mm.
his body of work, and I've adopted this, it's inviting those whole and well ancestors to come in, getting their willingness to help, which they are so willing. They know how important it is, and because um, very many cultures have had the beautiful opportunity of staying connected to their ancestors, but many cultures do not have that at all. It's not part of it's a cultural burden actually to not stay connected in that way. And so lots of us have been disconnected from those ancestors way back and the ancients, the ones who hold the wisdom. And I don't know what it's like for y'all in Australia if you have had this experience of, but it's very common in the United States where, and I'm guilty of it myself, where because we have lost touch with our whole and well ancestors and we have no connection to our indigenous roots, like mine are Celtic, right? But what do I know about Celtic indigenous people? Because I've been living in America, with and completely separate from all of that. And so lots of folks in America have gone to the indigenous people, including myself, Native Americans, South American shamans, trying to get in touch with some wisdom that Tibetan Buddhism, lots of places, Zen Buddhists, like traditions that have not lost touch with their ancestral wisdom. And so, you know, uh, lots of Americans flock to those people like, please teach me. I don't know anything. I've lost touch, right? But there's something about this body of work where if we can start to access our whole and well ancestors, then maybe we can start to access some of the wisdom that is our own culturally, rather than trying to borrow from other cultures. We can access that. It's been one of the greatest gifts for me in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, as I've been going to the land of my ancestors. I'm French, English, and Irish, and hanging out with the stone circles, and going to south of France to the caves where Mary Magdalene lived to try to access some of that wisdom, and along with connecting into my whole and well ancestors, like I can start to access some of those rituals, some of that wisdom, some of that knowledge that's inherently mine. So I'm not going out trying to get that from, cultures that are not mine. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's like it's not really mine. It's not mine to borrow, It's like so
Yeah.
really appreciating all that wisdom from other cultures, and at the same time really trying to find that within my own as much as I can, as much as I
Yeah.
have access. And then some of that wisdom that was like taken from our ancestors because of colonization or because of religion or because of all the many reasons where we got cut off, we could start to access that again, which feels really important for our world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we're going to kind of circle back around to some of these more deeper concepts. But Kay, if I could just kind of take you back a little bit to when you said you went and you researched all these things and you gathered these learnings, and you and Michie Rose and A few other people were kind of bringing this to IFS. I'm really curious just to kind of name for people a bit more explicitly, like, what did you learn? Like, what is a legacy burden? What is a legacy gift? What do we
Yeah.
inherit or not inherit? And just kind of break that down kind of a bit more, like, so people can kind of feel the nuts and bolts of it, even though it is so
Yeah.
energetic and a bit more
Yes. Yeah, but it's
ephemeral.
very nuts and
Yeah.
bolts at the same time. Like
Yeah.
like I named for myself, right? Like my mother had
Yeah.
lost her mother, right, at a
Mm.
very young age. And I was walking around with this intense abandonment stuff, like feeling like I'm going to be abandoned at any moment, like
Yeah.
very shaky, scary stuff. And I didn't have any abandonment in my childhood, right? So
Mm.
that abandonment that was really my mother's, I was caring for her.
Mm.
I have one of my closest friends is her parents were Holocaust survivors, and she can't, she can't not think about death. Like all that, she's always scared that everybody around her is going to die and she's going to die. It's like it's just in her. It's like in her nervous system, right? The nuts and bolts of it are just shaking inside of her all the time. Like little things like she'll get a new apartment and then she'll have this panic that it's not safe there,
Yeah.
that it's not safe. And this is stuff that she can't it didn't come from her childhood. This is like she's carrying her mother's anxiety. She's carrying her parents' panic and fear about death and about life not being safe, right?
Yeah.
And those that's like or even like some I'd say like even like alcoholism, it's like we always think alcoholism is hereditary, but like why is it hereditary? It's like yeah, it might be in the DNA and it might be really learned, but it's also in these like Rupert Sheldrake, who's the physicist that I spoke about. This was like so opening for me because he talked about these morphic fields, which are energetic fields that run through cultures and through families. So it's like we think it's DNA or it's genes but no, there's energetic fields that run through families or through cultures. So, Ali, your mother's people, your mother's family would have like an energetic field that's running through them, and the stuff gets passed down through the field. And it's the same in the culture, right? So if you grow up in a particular culture, it's like that culture has an energetic field, and
Yeah.
you're living in that field. And so trying to understand what what it is that we carry, first of all. So how when we're doing an IFS session and you get down to asking someone, so you might say, okay, so this feeling of rage that you have, like how long do you think that feeling has been with you? And
Yeah.
people will say, wow, I don't remember a time when it wasn't with me, right? Or
Yeah.
I came in with this rage, like this rage has always been with me. And we
Yeah.
start to suspect that it could be a legacy burden, right?
Hmm.
So we say to the person, so just check, like, is this your rage or does this rage belong to someone else?
Yeah.
And people know right away and they'll say, oh, oh my God, yeah, some of this is mine, but this is my father's rage.
Yeah.
This is my dad's rage. And then we know, right? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna invite the father in and we're gonna find out how much of this rage is yours and how much of it goes back even further than you. And
Yeah.
so the father's energy comes in, dead or alive, right? And says, yeah, this is mine, but this is also my father's, right?
Mm.
And then we're inviting in that grandfather, right? And we're asking that grandfather, so how much of this is yours and how much of it belongs to someone else? And he might say, well, this was also my father's, it's mine. But and these legacy burdens can go back one generation, they can go back 3 generations, they can go back 20 generations, right? Depending on what came in, 5 generations ago, say some big thing happened 5 generations ago, and it keeps getting passed down and passed down and passed down because those people aren't dealing with it, they're just passing it down, right?
Yeah.
So it comes to you and you're holding generations of rage, right? That doesn't even belong to you. And you get the opportunity to do some healing for all of the ancestors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I just want to reflect back, if that's okay. So what I'm hearing is that there's these morphic fields that travel through cultures and they travel through family groups, and that some of the legacy can be passed down through those. And you also mentioned genes and epigenetics, that there's some way of kind of tracing this. I think there's a lot of research around kind of Holocaust, the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, and how that kind of gets expressed in their genes, the intergenerational trauma. So there's something connected there as well. And what I'm hearing is that, yeah, that these legacy burdens are things that aren't in our personal autobiographical history, that something hasn't happened to us in our lifetime and then we've developed a particular belief or a particular energetic response to something that happened to us, because we would call them kind of personal burdens in IFS. But these legacy is something that transcends our lifetime. And what I heard is that when you notice that in someone's system, and if you get curious about that and ask about its origins, you'll start to hear that it came from someone else, that it might have even come from further back than that. And you can start to trace these things back through time. Yeah. Sorry, Lani, I interrupted you. Yeah. I just wanted to kind of clarify that, just to kind of, because I know there'll be people that have maybe done a level 1 and they're listening to this and they've just encountered legacy burdens and they're kind of like, what is this thing? And, they don't have kind of a concrete sense to it. So I just wanted to offer that back to you, Kay.
Yes. Yeah, and the trauma, it's often the traumas that are not fully digested by one generation, right? And so they're not fully digested, and then you have children and that trauma gets passed on to them to try to digest it a little more. And maybe that person is going to digest it, or maybe they're not. And maybe it's going to get passed on one more generation, right? Until somebody in that family line decides to do the deep work, the hard work, and
Yeah.
and digest it all the way through.
Mm.
And often it feels like it's this current time now where people are doing deep work and people do have access to really good therapy, and IFS is a beautiful model for helping people to digest all of this. So it's not a surprise that it's coming up now. Right.
Thank you, Kay. And thank you, Ollie, for kind of like making that, so clarifying that. Because one of the things, Kay, that I've noticed is that often clients come in, they don't have a story, like the direct autobiographical story that this has happened. They just come in with a sense, with a sensation, it could be through dreams, it could be through just like you say, that's just energy, but it doesn't actually fit in their current life experiences. And for me, that's a real kind of like a marker that we are working with some sort of legacy material.
Yes.
So the story has been lost, but what's left behind is the energy, is the feeling, is the belief.
That's right. And that's why it's so helpful and important to be able to access the body, to be able to really work with the body and work through the body. And the body can hold all kinds of memories and all kinds of energies from other generations, that we can't get to through talk therapy. Like we just can't get there. And so by listening to the body, by going into the body and just spending time with it and really listening, letting the body talk and letting the body begin to express the fullness of what it's carrying, legacy burdens can start to come from that, right? Because we can be carrying all kinds of things in our bodies that don't belong to us, right?
Yeah.
And so the body, I was teach, when we talk about trailheads, there's all kinds of trailheads, and the body is a really big one, you know. So really
Yeah.
keeping the body as a trailhead and really following and listening and letting it kind of unwind some of these stories.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to speak a little bit about what are legacy gifts as well, like just to distinguish between the two?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, this seems so important to me because I think, um, there are the gifts that we're aware of, and then there's gifts that we've lost that we can reclaim, you know. And that's where I think the whole and the well ancestors are so helpful because we can, I remember when I first started to work with legacy burdens, I spent a lot of time, having people name the gifts, and the gifts can be, very accessible to us. I'm sure if I asked both of you, you could come up with gifts. Um, I think about, my grandmother who uh, was from England and pretty emotionally repressed, I would say, English woman, but very, loved beautiful things and loved to cook and loved lace and, beautiful clothes. And, so I can see that there are some of the gifts that I have around beauty, that I can give to my grandmother. My grandmother, who died in a mental institution, she was a great artist. So it's like I don't have those skills, but my daughter does. She's a great artist, and I think she got them from there. So there's those kind of obvious gifts, right? But then this I almost get chills here. This is like it's the gifts that we need to recover because we've lost touch with them. So the whole and well ancestors, like a lot of the gifts that we have been tortured out of us, or I think about like the gifts of women whose ancestors were herbalists or midwives, or they may have been burned as witches, and so a lot of those gifts got diminished. you know um, there are gifts that we've lost touch with because maybe we were punished for them or killed for them or tortured for them, or right. And so some of those gifts get cut off in the ancestral line. And so as we connect back up with those whole and well ancestors and we help to restore the health of our ancestors, some of those gifts come back. you know um,
Yeah.
the gifts that we were, I mean, even like different spiritual beliefs, like lots of people were tortured and killed for, and hurt. And so to access those whole and well ancestors and to allow those whole and well ancestors to begin to restore our whole ancestral line, some of those gifts start coming back in,
Yeah.
and we can take some of those gifts that maybe we were afraid to embrace because, once upon a time we got killed for them, or we got tortured, or, they were not okay. And
Mm. Yeah.
And it's going to be different for, every culture. But I think, and for personally, for myself, my whole inquiry about the south of France and Mary Magdalene and all of that wisdom, which was hidden for, so many hundreds and maybe even thousands of years, right? And it's starting to be uncovered. And so there's a whole body of wisdom coming through me that I wouldn't have had access to without that healing. So, you know, and
Yeah.
been able to bring out and share with other people. Um, so, there's the known gifts and then there's the hidden ones that we can't
Yeah.
know about till our whole and well ancestors help us to remember, like actually remember who we are as a as a person and our lineage, and bring it back together. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think of a personal example I want to share about that, Kay, of how that manifested for me. Um, Before I started speaking publicly about IFS, I got invited to do a talk with about 90 counselors to just introduce the model to them. And it was the first kind of big talk in front of a group of, kind of professionals about IFS. And in the lead up to it, I started feeling this immense anxiety about getting up in front of this group, which is a common experience for a lot of people with public speaking. But there was something about it, about being shamed and about being persecuted in front of a group of professionals. And I did a few sessions with my IFS supervisor, Kirsten Lundeberg, who you might know, one of the
Oh
IFS
yeah, I love
trainers. Yeah.
Kirsten.
Yeah, Kirsten's
Oh,
one of my supervisors, and we did this beautiful piece of work of getting to know the part that held this, and it ended up being a legacy connected to my mum's lineage and her grandmother's grandmothers, and it was around women being persecuted for speaking out, for speaking up. And
yes.
as we began to witness that and be with that, and Kirsten helped me to kind of through kind of some legacy work to witness what happened to those women, to feel the pain of being persecuted, to feel the threat of not being able to speak up or stand up for themselves.
Yes. Yes.
And then as that was processed and released, and at the time I didn't know the concept of a Holden Well ancestor, but then what I thought was a guide at the time, but it could have been an ancestor, kind of came in, and I started to feel this shift internally and in my throat. And then I spontaneously started to sing and hum and had all this kind of energetic shift coming out of me. And Kirsten told me afterwards
Wow.
that she had herself on mute and that she also started to spontaneously sing. And and
Whoa.
that and we had this really kind of burst of this gift come through.
Oh,
And then when I went and did the talk, like just before I did this talk, and it was really significant because it was introducing the IFS model to the Western Australian Counselling Association. So it was the first time of sharing it in that
yeah.
way. And I could feel this lightness and this energy and this gift coming through. And then the
That's
talk went
exciting.
just better than any talk I've ever done. Like it was just so beautiful. And
Beautiful.
so I just wanted to
Oh,
share that's one way it
oh,
can manifest and come through, right? The
yes.
burden and then the gift. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that story, Ellie.
Mm.
And look what you're doing. Look what you're doing now. You have a podcast, right? Like,
Yeah.
right? And by
Yeah. Yeah.
working with that, like just by clearing that, right? You were able to just bring your gifts to the world in this beautiful way.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
The manifestation. Yeah, thank you, Ollie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lorena, do you have any ancestor gifts that you're aware of that might be ancient or that?
Yes, just briefly, I share that I also have done a bit of work with Daniel Four, and And one of the things that through the work came through was I met with my great grandmother,
Yeah.
who really, during that time, I was very ambivalent about where I was, what I was doing, why I was doing it.
Mm.
Um, and she just pointed to the heart. She said, "You are a heart healer, not a head healer." Uh,
Mm.
and she, in her lifetime, she was a healer of medicinal, herbal, kind of like one of those village elders. And she said, "You heal the heart, not the head." And
Oh,
that just stayed with me.
oh, and
Mm.
knowing you, that's really true, right? Like you are such a heart person and to get that gift, like to know, like, yeah, like healing from the heart, that's my path, right? Like that's a beautiful thing. And to
Mm.
know that I know that about myself too, that I'm a heart
Mm,
healer. Like, but
yeah.
to get that
Mm.
blessing in a culture that doesn't always necessarily honor that path, right? But to get that blessing from an elder who can really help you, even if the culture is not blessing it, right? Like she blessed you.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. That's like the North Star for me. So in session when I have parts of overthinking, overworking intellectual parts, she comes through and she just reminds me. So yeah, it's a real blessing.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for
Uh,
sharing.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
want to ask you, Kate, you mentioned about like you were one of the first to offer legacy um, training for level one, like legacy topic for level one. And I know that the institute is coming to really starting to really accept that because legacy topic is often was offered in level two, level three, but
Yes,
more and more it's a common practice that we offer in level one.
yes,
Thanks to you.
yes.
um, so, from your experience, Kay, what's one important thing you would like participants, level one participants, to walk away from um, uh, working with legacy? If there's one thing that you would highlight, what would that be?
Well, just to keep an open mind to it mostly, like just to realize that it is a thing. It's
Mm,
definitely a thing. And, you know, I don't know, 25 years ago it was a rare thing for somebody to have a legacy burden. But now it's a very, very common occurrence. Like I can't run a training now without it just showing up before I even start teaching it, right? It's just there it is. And so to have the awareness that that's a big possibility. And I actually believe that it's coming in more now
mm,
that I think, if you take a look at the world, it's like this is a topic that lots of people are talking about. Thomas Hubble is out in the world doing this and Daniel Ford. It's like it's become a much bigger topic because I think people are ready for it, right? Like people have done a lot of work with their young parts and so now we're ready for that next level of healing, I think. I think it's like another layer is coming through. And
mm,
so I bet if we knew about astrology or we knew how to, read energies, we would see that the time has come. That's what I think. I think there's
mm,
something happening on a bigger level to bring it up and out. So I don't think it's like because I brought it in. I think it's coming into the culture. It's being talked about in lots and lots of spaces. It's more like the 100th monkey, where you get it, and that's Rupert Sheldrake. That's Morphic Field actually, where somebody gets a whiff of something coming, just like IFS, like Dick got a whiff of it, right? And then started bringing people in, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think Legacy Burdens is very similar. Like Mitchie and Barb and I got a little whiff of it, and probably Thomas Hubble was probably off on his little world getting a whiff of it, and Daniel Four was off in his world getting a whiff. You know what I mean? Like there are certain people that things come through And then it starts to grow and grow and grow and grow. And then it's a phenomenon. So I would say now it's a phenomenon. And I don't
Yeah.
think we can not teach it because it's just showing up all over the place. That's
Yeah.
what I think.
Yeah. And Kay, I wonder if we could just kind of explore to another layer, like how this shows up. And I want to bring up my demo session with you that we did
Okay.
in Sydney, if it's okay. Earlier, you
Sure.
mentioned you mentioned a couple of things, and I just want to weave them into what happened in the demo. So, one was you talked about how this shows up in the body, and that we have to
Yes.
work with the body to be able to move through these legacy burdens. And I'll just name a name for everyone. So on my dad's ancestral lineage, he was adopted when he was only a few weeks old. He was given up to Melbourne Hospital by his mum because she was a young teenager and she wasn't allowed to keep him. She wanted to, but she had to give him up. And all throughout my life, I have felt these big feelings of abandonment and these feelings of not fitting in and not being accepted. And I hadn't had an experience that accounted for that in my
Yeah.
personal story because my parents were together. They were very loving with me. My mum was really attentive. They stayed together. I hadn't had an abandonment experience, but I had these big feelings that kept coming up in my system and it kept repeating in IFS sessions and psychedelic experiences and things.
Yes.
And then when we sat together, Kay, this huge experience came through where I accessed some of these really, really big feelings of abandonment. And I just wonder if you could kind of name how you worked with that, because all I remember was just sobbing, shaking, my foot going kind of moving around on the floor. And I was just
Yes.
kind of in it. I was also with it, and there was self energy present. But yeah, could you just talk like first about the body and how you worked with that with me, and how that's different to working with a personal burden? And then we'll go, and then I want to, and then afterwards, I want to ask you a follow up around then bringing in the ancestors. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when when the body is speaking like that, Ollie, for you, it was like your body just was gonna show us everything, right? It wasn't a mental, there was no mental thing at all. Your body was just really showing us what it was feeling. And so all the sensation took over and you were just in it, right? So we were basically doing direct access with your body, right? Like just holding self energy for the body to just it's and it would be the same if it was a really big emotion. Like let's say that rage came in and it was just like needed to just, right? And so we just allowed the body to do what it needed to do. We held space for it. We listened to it. We held self energy. And when the body was done really expressing itself, we would just start to move into I you have to forgive me that I don't remember any details of any session I ever do. I remember this, but I don't remember any of the details of it. I never do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm channeling. While I'm working, I'm channeling. So,
Mm,
so, but I'm aware, I remember that moment clearly. And then, but what I did was just hold enough self energy until you could just access a little more self energy,
yeah.
right? So that would be, in Hakomi, we would call that riding the rapids, which is just basically we're holding space for the rapids to come through, whether it's body sensation or whether it's really big feelings or a
Mm,
part that just take over. We just really allow that to be there until it starts to settle a little bit. And once it's
mm,
settled a little more, then we could start to access a little self energy,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember
And then
how
when,
that's what I
yeah.
apologize about. I don't remember how we did that because I was
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was channeling.
Can I ask a couple of follow-ups after that? And then when I started to get some space from it, I remember my foot started like really beating on the floor, and it was like a drum. And
Yes.
then you asked some questions around kind of like, where is this coming from? And then I spoke about like it coming from my dad's lineage, and then you might have got curious more about that, and it came further back in his line, and I realized there was this whole lineage of abandonment. It wasn't just my dad as a baby, but it was also coming back through the line. And then
Yes.
this was, and I've done that kind of work before, but then and this is why I wanted to circle back to Daniel Ford's work. I'm glad you both mentioned him. And then you asked something that I'd never experienced before. You asked to check if there was a place in the lineage, as far back in the lineage, where this had never happened, where there was
Yeah.
none of this burden of abandonment. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
this kind of drumming that I was doing on the floor with my foot. People told me this afterwards, that I was kind of doing this beat, and apparently your foot was doing it too.
Yeah.
And then I saw this drumming woman, this kind of grandmother,
Right.
in the distance, and you kind of facilitated this connection to them. And when you were
Yes.
mentioning before about whole and well ancestors and ancestral guides, I just really wanted to give people like a felt experience and an image of what that might feel like or look like.
Yes.
So could you talk about like what was that, and then why did you encourage that to come in, and then what happened after? Yeah, what's the process there that happened?
So so really allowing, and it's a common experience where someone will be in a really deep state, and then we're working towards lining up that lineage, right? Like, okay, so this was your father's, and then it went back and it went back and it went back. And then what we're doing is trying to find a place in the lineage that is whole and well, and that there's an ancestor really waiting to help. Like they really are waiting. So this woman, this drumming woman, she just showed up. We just invited her and she showed up,
Yeah,
right? And then she was there to assist in the healing of the lineage.
mm,
And so we ask her to, and this is Daniel Four's words, to create a cocoon of healing around the whole ancestral line. So you could use those words, or you could say to send a healing, an energetic holding of all that. You can use whatever words you'd like, but to really imagine that drumming woman being there and really just sending a healing down through that whole ancestral line. And
yeah,
then once that ancestral line is being held, just like with our parts, when our parts have been really hurt and they're really carrying a lot of pain, like they need to be witnessed and they want to be witnessed for the energy and the pain that they carry. So often we will, and that could be, that isn't always the same process. We don't always do that in one sitting. That could take some time. But for that, once that whole and well ancestor is there, is a holding place and a healing place, and that cocoon of healing can come down the ancestral line. And then together with that whole and well ancestor, we can start to witness what happened here. What happened with these people? What brought this abandonment on, right?
yeah,
And so the stories start to come out and they start to get listened to and they start to get heard. And just like with our parts, as our young parts start to tell their story and they get heard and they get listened to, they begin to heal, right?
mm,
They just, our ancestors went through so many horrible things with no one there to hold them and hear them, right? And they just had to buck up and get on to the next thing and have kids and survive, and right. So here's an opportunity for these ancestors to really have their stories told and to be heard. And as they start to tell those stories, they start to unburden, right? And then
Yeah.
as they start to unburden and begin to heal, we can come back to ourselves and find that legacy burden that we carry, that feeling of abandonment, and we can pass that back into that cocoon, right? Pass it back. Dad, this is not mine. Your dad takes yours and he takes his own, passes it back to his dad or his mom or whoever it came from. This is not Ollie's, it's not mine. And it gets passed back, all the way back. And
Yeah.
it gets passed back to that whole and well ancestor, knows how to take all of that energy and knows exactly what to do with it. Maybe she drums it out into the universe or sends it into a fire, into the earth or into
Yeah.
the air, right? And that burden becomes dispersed. And all of those ancestors begin to heal along with you who's been carrying that burden. And so
Mhm.
that whole and well ancestor sends a blessing back to each one of those ancestors until it
Yeah.
comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an incredible process. I love, I could feel it happening again as you're describing it,
I
which is
know, I
really
can feel
nice.
it
It
too. Now
feels,
I'm falling back into it. I'm remembering
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Um, and that was the one powerful difference in the legacy work that I've done before was, or the two powerful differences. One is that cocoon that actually the whole and well ancestor takes care of the healing of the lineage.
Yes,
And
yes,
this and the second big difference was this relational component to me and the whole and well ancestor, because what
yes,
I've noticed
yes.
now since then is that they're
Yeah,
now a
have you
presence
been in touch with
in my
her?
psyche. Yeah, she comes back quite
Oh,
often.
yay!
And so all of a sudden now, and this is something that I want to name for people because I think this is such a gift of this new addition to the work, is that now it's like another guide in my system. Like I've got
That's right.
access to this spiritual inner resource that I didn't have access to before. And so not only did I get the release of the abandonment burden, the new quality of feeling welcome and whole, and a few other
Yeah,
things, and fierce compassion was another thing that came through. And I now have this being that I have a relationship with who's now present in my life and comes through now in some of my IFS sessions. She's come through in kind of critical moments in experiences that I've had. So yeah, really, really
yeah.
powerful
I just had an
work.
experience personally, had an experience with this. My daughter was quite sick and I was really suffering and really scared and her father died. I have a new husband, but it's not her father. And so she's an only child, so I'm kind of holding her by myself. And then I remember, like, I don't have to, I'm not alone in this, and I call on my former husband, who's on the other side, but I call in all of her ancestors and all of my ancestors to hold her. And it's like, it's a game changer. It's like, I am no longer alone in the world. I have access to all of these ancestors and these whole and wise ones. And sometimes I write to them. I just like take out a pencil and paper. And I did that with her. I was like, how can I help her? And I let them speak through me. And so developing that relationship with them is ongoing, and it's not second nature for those of us who have not had relationships with ancestors before. Just like with guides, a developing relationship with guides, it's a similar relationship. Only these people are blood. It's very powerful. It's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
And since the world is in trouble, we need more help. We need their help, and so accessing that, just it just brings more holding for us as humans.
Yeah.
I so appreciate what you both are sharing, Kay and Ollie. What's coming through for me is this incredible trust in your self energy, in Ollie's self energy, and the self energy of all the ancestors that are holding the space.
Yes.
Um, and accessing that confidence that you can trust that they know what is required.
Yeah. 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 They have a wisdom that we, from where they're sitting, they
Mm.
know a lot more than we do, and so accessing them, really
Yeah,
accessing them,
yeah.
so important.
I Yeah, but coming back to what you say about what the this is such in need in our current time, in the political climate, in what's happening in our world.
Yes.
And just on that, Kay, given that there's so much wisdom out there, and I'm going to ask you a political question here, in that because this type of work isn't mainstream in mental health, it's
Yeah.
not, we don't talk about this in our university courses
Yeah.
and
Yes.
what have you. Um, but this is like old wisdom that
Yeah.
we are, appreciating.
That's
What
right.
would be one thing that you would like to share or inform policymakers that would improve their understanding and increase their support for mental health funding in this area? Okay, like if you have a whole bunch of policymakers and then you have the opportunity to really tell them about this amazing resource, what would you say to them to help them
I
support?
I don't know. I don't know. I try to stay away from those people, but I would try to get them to come to my workshop.
Okay, yeah, yes,
I can only do this because I'm old and I've done this work. Like I really am stepping out on a limb doing this, and it's been, I always was like, I was told not to teach this because it was a little too woo-woo, but I would sneak it in anyways. And then as I started to get older, it was like, this needs to be done. And it just, and because I'm an old lady now, I don't give a damn anymore. And I'm teaching what I know is true. And, whoever is up for it, it's gonna, and whoever's not. So there is some, and I think it's also because I've done this work of
mm,
allowing my ancestors to be healed. Like my people were burned as witches all over the place, and so it's like, shutting up about stuff that I know is old wisdom it was something I had to really sit on when I was younger because it was scary. And I'm not scared anymore. Like I just
mm,
really feel like this is
Mm.
this is at least my truth, and there's a lot of people resonating with it, so it can't be just I'm just this, woo-woo person who can't be heard because people are responding. So, and I
Yeah.
think it's because of the work I've done, and I'm old.
Yeah.
So what am I going to lose?
Yeah. I'm so glad that you are talking about it so openly, Kay. And yeah. And Lorani, I love that question, and I have parts that do want to respond to that. And what I would hope this interview does, and also speaking about this in other places, is to just bring more awareness to the mental health field that, hey, if clients are really stuck and you've done all the beautiful personal healing work, there might be this whole other area you're missing that is
Yes.
intergenerational and that is legacy, and that, all the medication in the world is not going to get rid of. That actually
Yeah.
we've got to start wondering about what is coming through the lineage, what is coming through the field that is in people that we might need to be with and address. And yeah, so I
And,
really like
and
that
it's
question,
also,
Lorani, and we're on the steps of doing that. Yeah, sorry, Kat, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's also a way, like, I think psychedelics are making an inroad with this, but it's also a way
Mm,
to do this level of work without psychedelics. So it's like to really go to these different places of consciousness without having to use psychedelics. Not that psychedelics are bad or wrong, or I'm for them. I'm a fan, but this is a way to do it without them, right? So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like old Stanley Groff when LSD got shut down and he started doing holotropic breath work. I kind of feel like I'm in his club.
Okay, just kind of like to close our um, connection with you and this session that you've been so generous with. I have what I call, this is new. So you're the first person that I'm going to launch this onto. Um, I term it as IFS Fast and Furious. And we're going to change gears a bit. And what it means is that I'm going to just ask you some questions, and if you can just answer them, first response. So first reaction, first thing that comes through your heart.
Okay,
You ready?
ready.
Okay. Your most endearing managerial activity.
People pleasing.
Most favorite firefighter activity.
Shopping. It's easy.
An exile gift that you have reclaimed.
An exile gift that I've reclaimed. Teaching legacy burdens.
A book you're currently reading or listening to.
A book I what?
That you are currently reading or listening to.
I'm reading Take Back the Magic by Perdita Finn.
Ah, yeah. What is most important to you at the moment?
Consciousness.
One playful thing that not many people know about you.
I like to wrestle with my husband.
What legacy gift do you wish to leave behind? Okay.
This one's so strong. It's really helping people to be fully who they are. Super important to me.
And which historical figure would you like to invite to dinner?
Oh boy, that's hard. So many. I'm gonna say Anais Nin.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose that?
I just think that she's somebody who just really lived her life like completely being who she was. She didn't have any, I think she was rare, a rare woman of her time who just really lived her life fully.
Yeah.
Wasn't concerned about what other people thought about her.
Yeah.
Helen.
That's coming through in you very strongly, Kay, today, which is awesome.
The gift of being old.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Seriously, it is.
Oh. And we ask this question, this final question we ask of all our interviewees, but what's one thing that you wish we'd asked you about that you want to share with the community?
Wow, I think you guys covered everything. I don't really have anything left over. Nothing. Nothing.
Okay.
You guys
Oh,
did
beautiful.
great.
Oh, great.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
And just want to express huge gratitude, yeah, to your bravery and seeking and exploration in this area. And then, yeah, your commitment to bringing it to the IFS community and to the world. It's really beautiful, Kay. And yeah, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing it with us.
Oh,
And yeah,
thank you both so much. I really had a wonderful time to be with you guys again. I had so much fun with you in Sydney and had a wonderful time being with you today. So thank you for inviting me.
yeah,
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for just being you, a trailblazer, and continue to trailblazing.
yeah.
All right, you
Thank you.
guys. Take good